What's up guys, my name's Ash and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video guys, I've got some custom tactics and player instructions for one of the best narrow formations in FIFA 23, this being the 4-1-2-1-2 second variation. But just before we get started guys, I would very much appreciate it if you could drop this a thumbs up. It's time for shapeshifters, so if you guys need any coins, make sure you check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap and reliable, and if you use my code Rema, you can get yourself a very nice 5% discount. Okay guys, so starting off with the custom tactics, for the defensive style I like to have this on balance. Now this is the same for every formation I use really, and the reason for this is it does give you the best control over your defenders. So when you need to press and apply pressure, you are able to do that, and then when you want to drop back, be a little bit more conservative and passive, you're also able to do that. So it really does give you the balance and control that the other settings do lack. Moving on to the width guys, I like to have this on 43. It's not really a specific number you need to use, but the reason I have it around about this is because I like my defense to be primarily in a nice narrow and compact shape, which will make us very good at defending all those attacks through the middle, because that is like the danger area. The most important part to defend is always the central areas, because that is where the goal is. So it's important to be narrow primarily, but the reason I have it on like 43 is so we do still maintain some of the natural width of the formation, so that we can still cover the wider areas in case an opponent tries an attack down the wing. Moving on to the depth guys, I've actually upped this to 67. Now this is actually quite high, but the reason I like it is because it allows me to win the ball higher up the pitch and start off a lot more quick attacks. Now I'm not a fan of having to defend for 90 minutes all the time, so what I was noticing was when my depth was quite low, I was getting pinned back and I was defending more than I'd like to, but when you have the depth higher, you win the ball higher up the pitch because your defensive line is higher, and you seem to have a much more attacking game, which is really nice. If this is too high for you though, you can lower it, that is not a problem. Now moving on to build-up play guys, I'm personally enjoying fast build-up. This goes in combination with the depth we've got on. The reason I like fast build-up is because, like I said, I like to try and win the ball back a bit higher up the pitch. So that in combination with fast build-up means our players are going to be moving around very quickly to create those good chances, and there's going to be a lot of movement in the build-up basically. So it allows us to create those quick, fast attacks, which isn't really possible with any other setting. Now if you're looking for the most meta option, I would still say balanced is the best, as it does give you the most control and is a lot more consistent, I'd say, than fast build-up. Fast build-up is just something really fun that I have been using. Moving on to chance creation guys, I really like direct passing. I think it's the most important tactic in the game. The reason for this is when you use direct passing, your attacking players bunch up against the defenders, so you can do the very overpowered 1v1 isolation plays. Players also make those extra movements in the box, so you can get off that extra pass to guarantee the goals. This really isn't possible with the other settings, which is why I think it is so important. Now moving on to the attacking width, I have this on 45. This is so we can keep the attack nice and narrow, because it is a narrow formation, so we don't want to make it something it's not. So we have it on 45, so it is nice and narrow, but at the same time it's not too narrow. We also don't want to up the width too much, because then it becomes too wide, and that's no good to us either. Moving on to players in box guys, I have this on 4. This is so we can get a few players into the box, but if we lose out, we're not always going to get counter attacked, because we are going to have quite a few players back to stop that counter attack. As for corners and free kicks, I have these on 1 because there is a set piece routine that I use which requires these to be on 1. You can check that out in the top right hand corner of the screen. Now I'm just going to give you guys some guidelines on the types of players you can use in each position, because I do get this comment quite a lot, is people asking, is this player good in this position, or should I use this player here? So I'm just making this to really give you guys the best idea of the types of players that you should be using in each position, in my opinion. Now it's not something you have to follow, it's just something I will suggest. So starting off with the two strikers, I like to go for a balance between the two. So what I like to do is have a more creative player on the left hand side, and then an actual clinical finisher on the other side. Now the reason I do this is because if you just use two out and out finishers, you can actually be very restricted in your attack, because those players are especially quite limited. They're not very good at dribbling and passing and that kind of thing. They're only really good at receiving the ball and finishing off a chance. So you'd be restricted to things like through balls and crosses. But if you implement a more creative player into the strike force, you're able to do a lot more. You're able to switch up your attacks, be a lot more varied, and do a lot more in the build-up, which just makes attacking a lot more fun and a lot easier, dare I say. So that is why I like to go for that balance there. Now moving on to the cam guys, you can pretty much use whoever you want, but I do suggest somebody with like a 5-star weak foot so that they're good on both feet, because they are in that central position. So sometimes you're going to have to pass left, other times you're going to have to pass right. It's really useful to have that good weak foot ability. It's also important that this player is competent enough to dribble, pass and shoot, as well as having decent pace, because they're the main playmaker in this position, and it's important that you use somebody that can actually do the job. Now for the right centre mid, I accidentally swapped Casemiro and Modric. So Casemiro was the right centre mid and Modric was the CDM. I didn't really notice for a minute, but Casemiro is meant to be the CDM. But in the right centre mid spot, I suggest going for a more box-to-box player. This is somebody that is actually going to attack and defend. So I would suggest somebody with a high work rate if you can get it, as you get that maximum contribution in both the attack and defence. But just ensure that this player has a nice well-rounded card so that they are capable of doing a bit of everything. Moving on to the CDM guys, I suggest using a more defensive-minded player. This is somebody that is going to stay back while we are going forward. They're going to be there to break up the play and ensure we are as solid as possible, basically. So I would suggest somebody with a medium-high work rate if you can get it, as you get the maximum contribution in defence and they're not too bothered about going forward. Moving on to the left centre mid guys, I suggest using an actual attacker here. This is because this player is not really going to have to defend as a centre mid. We'll get onto that in the player instructions, but that means you can pretty much use whoever you want in this position here. So I suggest using an actual attacker here so that he can contribute to the attack and really give you more options going forward. You can pretty much use whoever you want in this position. Don't worry about the defensive ability. As for the two fullbacks, I like to go for a balance between the two. So I like to go for a more attacking minded fullback in Roberto Carlos, somebody that's a bit more technical, and then in the right back position I go for Cafu, who's a little bit more defensive and not as good on the ball. As for the two centre backs and the keeper, these just need to be the full meta players. There's not too much to say about them. Now for the player instructions guys, on both the strikers I like to have them on stay central and get in behind. The reason we have them on stay central is because they are our strikers, so we don't want them drifting off into those wider areas. We need them to be in the middle where the striker should be, which is why stay central is super important on both of them. We also have them on getting behind, so they're always looking to bother your opponent and make those runs. It's very easy to play a through ball in behind that way, and it does create you the most chances. If you're playing against somebody that is very difficult to beat, you can change your more creative player to mixed attack, so they make more versatile movements, get more involved in the build-up, and you might find it a bit easier to attack. But right off the bat, I think getting behind is satisfactory. Moving on to the cam guys, we have him on comeback on defense and get into the box for cross. We have him on comeback on defense, so it makes the team defend in a 4-4-2 shape. This is super important because the 4-4-2 is a much more superior defensive formation than the 4-1-2-1-2. So by putting this cam on comeback on defense, he will come back to defend as a right mid in the 4-4-2 shape. So when we're attacking, we're in a 4-1-2-1-2, and then when we lose the ball, we're in a 4-4-2. So we're really good in attack and defense. We also have him on get into the box for cross, so he isn't hesitant to get into the penalty area and will always be there to finish off those chances if he has to. Now moving on to the right centre mid, the more box-to-box style player, we have him on the default settings and cover centre. We have him on the default settings because he is a box-to-box player. He does have a bit of a free roll, so we kind of let him do his own thing. We don't want to restrict him all that much. The only important thing is that we have him on cover centre, so he does defend as one of the centre mids in the 4-4-2. Moving on to the CDM, the most defensive player, we have him on stay back while attacking, cut passing lanes and cover centre. We have him on stay back because he's defensive. We have him on cut passing lane, so he's always looking to intercept those passes and break up the play. And then most importantly, we have him on cover centre, so he does defend as a centre mid in the 4-4-2 shape. Now for the left centre mid, where I use an actual attacker, we have him on get forward, get into the box cross and cover wing. We have him on get forward because, like I said, he is an attacking player, so we do actually want him to go forward. We have him on get into the box cross, so he isn't hesitant to get into the penalty area. And then most importantly, we have him on cover wing, so he does defend as a left mid in the 4-4-2. This is why I said it's not important for this player to have good defensive stats, as they're not actually going to have to defend as a centre mid. So the way this team's going to line up when we don't have the ball is the back four will be the same. Rafinha will be my left mid, Casemiro will be my left centre mid, Modric will be my right centre mid, and Saka will be my right mid. Moving on to the two fullbacks, guys, I actually have them on stay back while attacking and overlap. The reason I do this is so we can be as defensively solid as possible. Basically, when you have these fullbacks on stay back while attacking, it's much more difficult for your opponent to just counter attack you and play one through ball down the line, because you're going to have four defenders covering. We have them on the overlap run type though, so when we do send them on a run forward, they'll make the overlapping runs to add extra width. Now what I like to do nowadays when I'm sending these players forward is use the D-pad tactics to put on attacking fullbacks and then quickly switch it off when I want them to start defending again. So it's a lot more versatile than just having one of them on balance, but if you struggle a bit with using like D-pad settings, you can just put one of them on balanced attack and overlap. As for the centre backs and the keeper, these are on the default settings and I do not touch them. But yeah guys, they're my custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-1-2-1-2. If you have enjoyed or found it useful, please be sure to drop this a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and don't forget to turn on notifications. And with all that aside guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.